Della Maddalena just changed the UFC timeline in a completely new direction. I mean, wow. Now, don't get me wrong, dude. That was literally the best case scenario I could have asked for from Jack Della Maddalena. Like, wow. That incredible performance just put a lot of respect on Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, not like incredible. This guy just walked down Belal Muhammed, who a lot of people thought was going to be heavily favored in this fight, and it was just incredible. Like, Jack Della Maddalena just really did that. He really just outclassed Belal Muhammed, walked him down, stayed in his grill, and incredible like stamina and that 5-round cardio. And he did it. Jack Della Maddalena is the welterweight champion. He got the belt off Belal Muhammed, which I can't be mad about. But again, Jack Della Maddalena won, but at what cost? Because a fight that I was heavily in favor of, which we like one of the greatest high-level, biggest matchups we could have gone this year between Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria, now seems to be off the table after Dana White confirmed at the press conference that this main event would have immediate implications, not immediate, but significant implications on the what would happen at UFC 317 and the landscape of the lightweight division. And it was pretty clear if Belal won, it would be Islam staying at lightweight to defend against Ilia in a mega fight. And if Jack Della Maddalena wins, which he did, Islam would move up, which Islam has already tweeted at Jack Della Maddalena, going at him, keep my belt clean, all this stuff. And then Ilia would fight Charles Oliveira. And yeah, I mean, it was a win-win, but I can't believe it. Like, I was a little bit like torn. I'm like, I really want to see the Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev fight. So do I need to go for Belal now? Like, that's what it came down to. But literally in another world, like where we could get both, like Jack Della Maddalena winning and the Ilia versus Islam matchup, then that was the best case scenario that I could have seen from Jack Della Maddalena. He just showed incredible fight from both these men, honestly. Belal Muhammed, that was not a boring fight from Belal Muhammed. He had a great fight in this fight. And even the takedowns, I mean, it surprised me in the beginning how little he was actually trying to stay on the feet and show off those Canelo hands. He was trying to win Jack Della Maddalena in the boxing exchanges. But Jack Della Maddalena was the real area where he shines and was better than Belal in is the striking, the boxing. Jack Della Maddalena was not looking to back down. He's not a Leon Edwards. Belal Muhammed learned that very quickly. Jack Della Maddalena stayed in his grill, was walking him down, was not giving Belal Muhammed any free exchanges at his expense. Jack Della Maddalena was bringing the fight to Belal as well. And Belal also doesn't like to back up. He also likes to bring in pressure. And even the takedowns, Jack Della Maddalena, people were worried, oh, he got taken down by Gilbert Burns. What's going to happen? Amazing takedown defense. Incredible takedown defense from Belal Muhammed, and he really just did that. He beat Belal Muhammed. Actually, not just beat him, but effed him up. He fucked up Belal Muhammed. And yeah, this is just incredible. He left him with a nasty, like, ripped up lip too, with just blood. Incredible fight by this round, and Jack Della Maddalena's strikes were so like accurate. He had the cardio, the durability. He's really showing like new levels to this side of him as a fighter that we haven't really seen, because again, Jack Della Maddalena was still kind of on the come up. The last time we saw him was a year ago versus Gilbert Burns, which I forgot to mention. He had that fight with a broken arm. He broke that fight and still finished it with elbows and finished Gilbert Burns. He went through a couple of tussles with Gilbert Burns, and Gilbert Burns had more success on the ground with Jack Della Maddalena actually than Belal Muhammed. But Jack Della Maddalena came back in that fight. He finished Gilbert Burns, and now to come into this fight where people really kind of had this thought that Belal Muhammed was going to be too much for Jack Della Maddalena to handle. And in fact, Jack Della Maddalena flipped that script. And he really showed that he was more than just hanging with Belal. He was taking the fight to Belal. He was winning the rounds. Going into the fifth round, his corner's like, listen, you're 5 minutes away from this championship. You're 5 minutes away from this fight. Play it safe and play smart. And Jack Della Maddalena still went after it. And he really just, incredible by Jack Della Maddalena. Wow. He effed up Belal Muhammed and is our new UFC welterweight champion. Coming after a year, get this title opportunity. And now he's 18-2, still undefeated. UFC's probably really happy they got Belal out of there now. And they're probably going to give him another long road back to the title. I mean, there's so many exciting matchups at welterweight. But now Islam Makhachev to be in the picture, I mean, listen, there's a number of guys that could still like be Jack Della Maddalena's first title defense that are actually in the division. It could be Joaquin Buckley, Sean Brady. People are forgetting about Shavkat already. This is how quickly people could forget about a guy like Shavkat, because now Jack Della Maddalena is a champion. You got Sean Brady, Joaquin Buckley, Ian Gary. But now you're going to have Islam Makhachev cut the line and fight Jack Della Maddalena. But again, this kind of leaves mixed feelings in my head, like, because we're now missing. We might have to wait a little bit longer for Islam Ilia. Who knows if we'll ever get that fight again? Now, here's the possibilities, right? Of course, Islam, and he said also that even though this fight is going to change his decisions, he's not going to vacate the lightweight title. So does that mean that Ilia now is fighting for an interim versus Charles? Is that what the UFC is going to force them to do? Because one of the sources was saying that no, Ilia's fighting for either vacant or undisputed. Interim is not an option. But the UFC is not going to vacate Islam for what he's done, how down of a champion he is, how many times he defended. He has a right, I guess, to move up and try to get double champ status. So what? They have Ilia fight Charles at 317 for the interim. And then if Islam beats Jack, does he move back down to fight Ilia Topuria? Do they both defend first and then they meet up for an even bigger fight? I mean, so many pieces have to play right for that fight to happen down the line. But right now we would have to wait a little bit longer, because in my head I was so hyped, because in less than 50 days we could have seen an Ilia versus Islam Makhachev matchup. When Ilia first beat Max Holloway, I was not expecting them to immediately have him jump a division to fight Islam. I thought that Ilia would defend a little bit more. Islam would have to have the Arman fight, and then they can maybe meet in a distant future, and then Ilia vacated. So I'm like, are we really going to get this Islam fight? It's so possible, because now he's vacated the title. He's really trying to make this possible. And I thought and I have this expectation we're going to get that super fight sooner than we thought. But again, as I said, Jack Della Maddalena just shifted the entire UFC timeline now. So many ripple effects are now happening in the welterweight and lightweight division. And the UFC is probably going to announce this in the next 48 hours, what's going to be with 317. I really hope, because let's just be honest, Ilia versus Charles does not have as much hype as Islam versus Ilia. It just doesn't. Charles versus Ilia does not have as much hype as that fight. So they got to heavily stack 317. Don't get me wrong, Charles versus Ilia is still a sick fight, but it's not as big. It's just not as big. And when you have a certain level of expectation for that fight, then it's going to be a little bit of a drop-off to have now Charles versus Ilia. That's just the reality. So at this point, there's always a cost, right? To have Jack Della Maddalena win, which I really, really wanted, but then to miss out on the mega fight between Ilia and Islam, it's just the trade-off that I guess we have to live with. But Belal is no longer a champion, and we could still get some high-level fights, and perhaps Ilia and Islam do meet in the future for the big fight. I mean, I was ready to yell my head off when they announced this. I was ready to yell my head off to reacting to the Ilia versus Islam news. So, yeah, we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer and just have the optimism that this fight could happen. In a perfect world, they still go with Islam versus Ilia, but the way Islam's tweeting and the way the UFC seems to be moving, it seems like we're just getting Charles versus Ilia. But I got to be okay with it, right? We all got to be okay with that. So, incredible performance by Jack Della Maddalena. Just an incredible fight. A lot of sick, exchanges. Really just left Belal Muhammed in a crazy way, which I'm so happy about. And it's exciting moving forward with now having Jack represent the welterweight division. Thank God. Thank God that Belal Muhammed only had one title. He didn't even have a title defense. He's not even a real champ, bro. He only won it once, and then he's out of there. Mad funny. So incredible. And the rest of the card too, Valentina Shevchenko defends, very razor close fight with Manon Fiorot. But Valentina, and in the first couple minutes, Valentina already had Manon bleeding. Sick custom kit also on Valentina. She remains the champion. This sets up a potential super fight between her and Zhang Weili. Now I think Zhang Weili is going to defend one more time versus Vernon Jandiroba, who seems to be a pretty legitimate contender in the strawweight. Once she defends, there's no excuse. Put Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili. And then Jose Aldo retires versus Ayman Zahabi. Jose took a bad beating in the final round by Ayman. He had Ayman hurt. He was chasing him. He didn't realize how much time was still left on the clock, and he fatigued himself out, and then he went for a takedown. Like, why would you do that? And he ended up getting so tired, and then Zahabi just fell onto him. He welcomed Zahabi to just fall on him and start elbowing him, started making him bleed. And yeah, Jose Aldo retires. It was a tough week for him with the weight cut. And then don't really care about this fight. But yeah, Jose Aldo, legend in the sport. And just him coming back after retiring just didn't really feel so right. I mean, who did he beat? Jose Martinez, lost to Mario Batista, and then lost to Ayman Zahabi. Kind of an interesting run in his second run back in his UFC career. So kind of happy he decided to. It did seem bad on him, like really hard on him to make the weight. So he didn't seem like the same guy. And then Benoit Saint Denis versus Kyle Prepelic. Benoit, this fight should mean absolutely nothing for him. I mean, he was supposed to fight Alvarez, and Alvarez was going to destroy him, in my opinion. But they throw this guy Kyle Prepelic in here who didn't have the strongest UFC run on short notice. Like, this shouldn't really be looked at as any kind of significant win for Benoit. You know, okay, he gets back in the win column, he gets like a nice finish. This was expected with a guy like this, with an NPC like Kyle Prepelic. Okay, Benoit now needs to face a real guy and see if he then could still be considered a real contender after losing to Moicano and Poirier. I don't value this win at all with Benoit Saint Denis. It's just to keep him on the card and keep the card full. Mike Maylot, sick finish versus Radke. Picked Maylot. So you had Charles Radke talking all that talk to the Canadian fan base just to get finished by the hometown guy. And then Modestas Bukauskas gets the win in Navajo Sterling. Also, very scary moment, but Marc-André Ariute elbowed Bruno Silva and seemed to crack his skull. That was pretty crazy. And and then Begzat starts the card with a really quick, like a minute into the fight finish. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much the summary of the card, and we are going to see what happens next with UFC 317 now. By Tuesday, either Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we're getting this announcement. So my next video will be reacting to that card when they announce it. So let's get ready for Charles versus Ilia, end of June.